Related Papers 21 to 25. Space, Time, and Progression. Time and space aren't real, not as inexorable and immutable as they seem to be, but they are essential in this human scheme of things. Rather than deny their existence, metaphysicians would do well to come to comprehend why they are not what they seem to be and what role they play in the human experience. When we take subjectivism into account, time and space remain the means by which we are able to comprehend the reality that lies specifically behind them. Point isn't necessarily real from the standpoint of sphere, but it is a specific step in the mathematical progression in the knowledge of sphere. One goes from point to line, and from line to plane, and finally from plane to sphere. Sphere is real in the absolute sense, and the point, line, and plane are three lesser dimensions within it, building it, so to speak. There is a natural hierarchy here and a cosmology. Even though our comprehension of sphere is built point to line to plane, sphere precedes them in time and space. Our steps of comprehension are after the fact. Sphere knows all about point, line, and plane, whether point, line, and plane know themselves or not, and none of them, neither separately nor together, can know the whole of sphere. Sphere knows sphere. Time is one of the steps in the comprehension of its opposite, timelessness. Space is a step toward the comprehension of its quantum state, infinity. The logician and philosopher, occasionally the subjectivist, want to know why the fall into time and space in the first place. If they aren't real, why do they seem to exist? That question asked of philosophy, religion, and metaphysics is tantamount to the ancient wonderment about the origin of evil, if God is good and God made everything perfectly. Religion, philosophy, and metaphysics have never answered that question to the satisfaction of logicians. The absolute metaphysical pronouncement that evil doesn't exist outside the belief it does still doesn't answer the more basic question of who the believer is who entertains or seems to entertain pictures of presidents getting cancer and terrorists taking hostages. Again, the absolute position of metaphysics. None of this is even going on. It's all a lie, and I don't have to explain a lie. Doesn't say anything that helps anything. Similarly, the claim that death is an illusion has done nothing to lessen the appearances of that illusion among those who call it illusory. The proper logician wants and deserves a better answer. Theology demands one, but can't make it. Metaphysics cannot evade or double talk forever without a real answer. Philosophy can't dismiss the matter forever either. Science comes closer to answers than religion, metaphysics, or philosophy, but science presents the intolerable position that refuses to take spirit, ineffability, deity into account. Like Zen Buddhists, particle physicists and mathematicians insist they can't get beyond the limits of the senses to speculate about the existence or non-existence of Godhead, so they refuse to talk about it. But science has reached the point at which it can no longer evade the issue of ineffability. Scientists are getting there ahead of the metaphysicians, ministers, and priests, surprising to say. One wonders if they will be as successful at hiding quantum mechanics as the theologians in hiding subjectivism, dismissing it as silly solipsism. Now, after all these years, I find myself able to give an answer that completely satisfies the logicians and pragmatists about the reasons for the appearance of evil in the world, provided they take the unreal time and make the necessary subjective proofs for themselves. I know the answer is satisfactory because I was long the pragmatic logician, seeking the answer, content with nothing less than precise logic itself. What I find so interesting now is something never expected originally. Now that I have the answer, able to articulate it sufficiently, such that certain states of mind can understand and agree with the same marvel of marvels, the people in the world who least want to hear the answers are those who first propounded the questions so vigorously. It is a paradox of paradoxes to which many masters have alluded. Jesus said, "Now you do not ask." The old nature of us so hates to display its ignorance. The physical scientists are interested when I can catch their ear. People are interested, but ministers, priests, rabbis, and religious metaphysicians seem to have no interest whatever. So those who rely on them for guidance have no interest either. Those who spend their time in study straining to catch a bit of light here and a glimpse there are too busy to examine the quantum gift that is new unseen. The crack in the armor of the world. Nearly everyone understands that the sound of thunder follows the flash of lightning. Fewer understand that the flash we see with the eyes is also delayed in time, that the flash follows the actual bolt of lightning by a fraction of a second. If you explode a giant firecracker on top of Double Oak Mountain, you will see the flash there before I see it here 2 miles away, just as you will hear the explosion before I do. Light travels at a finite speed. The flash is fast, but not instantaneous. Now let me ask, do you see that there is something prior to your own world view of people, places, and things? That is, the image I see across the room, or even in the mirror in front of me, has something that precedes my view of it, delayed in time by a fraction of a second, just like the explosion on the distant hill. As you and I sit here talking to one another, you see your own hands folded in your lap before I do. Our views of your hands seem to be simultaneous, but they are not. At least not in the space-time world. Everyone thinks, but we see each other at virtually the same time. What difference can a billionth of a second make? Ask a particle physicist how much difference that amount of time can make. Years ago, when I first discovered the subjective nature of the tangible universe and realized there was something else standing behind everything the world calls material, I called it principle then, I realized that this knowledge should allow me to see evidences of that prior principle, perfection where I had been seeing sickness, life in place of death. But such evidences or demonstrations did not always come to me on schedule or in the manner I expected. There was no consistency. It wasn't until I discovered the chink in the armor of matter that I began having repeatable demonstrations, as the scientists would call their experiments. That chink has to do with space, time, and the speed of light. The crack appeared when the logical mind of me could concretely understand why and how it wasn't possible to look outside myself as consciousness and see something there instantaneously in time. But I could look within consciousness as awareness and perceive selfhood immediately. Then, that knowledge in hand, I could expect the image out there to confirm my self-knowing, precept upon precept. And it did, it does, it must. Who can explain this miracle to another? There certainly seem to be those within myself who are given to understand the subjective idea, and those who are not. I do not know why so few understand, especially metaphysicians, but I can guess with assurance that this is the reason men like Jesus have said throughout linear history, "Let him who has ears to hear understand." Now, we come to the wonder of wonders. Suppose I get up in the morning, look into the mirror, and see that image in front of me looking like death itself. What am I to do? I know that awareness doing the looking precedes that image in the world time. As awareness, I am pure and perfect, no matter what the mirror tells me, or the doctor tells me, or anyone else. Identified as awareness itself, I exist before time and space. I precede time and space. I precede the feelings of the body and any of its appearances. There is an instant of a second which permits, as time and space go, the misty, ordinary light to intrude with a delineating picture of things. I do not have to accept those appearances as final, nor continue to believe the humanly expected causal, linear relationships to unfold in space and time as the world predicts. If I hold out my hand and see evidences of the most horrible sight there, a huge cancer, say, or an angry, sullen mate, I know that there is a lag between what I am and what I see, and that same lag permits the real light of truth to alter the tangible seeing with a picture of goodness. If a mother looks out and sees the sight of her child falling under the wheels of a great red truck, she does not have to see the mangled consequences of death and destruction following in time, because the glimpse of healing truth comes in that instant of an instant and is perpetually here to be seen when we look for it and confidently expect it. As the physicist or mathematician would say, the glimpse contains infinite possibilities within itself. But, my friend, I had to know why I didn't have to accept the appearance before I could expect to look back into the mirror again and see confirmation of the immaculate nature of awareness being confirmed in time and space. Again, I don't know why I had to know that, but I did. Perhaps you must too, if you expect to see the marvelous confirmations in your experience that I have seen in mine. This is not the only requirement, of course. There is still the matter of what one is to do with the glimpse and how one is to live the equation of living. When the physicist or astronomer begins to take the prior consciousness of himself, the experimenter, into account and begins to examine the awareness, which is an integral part of every experiment and precedes it in time, he will be able to prove the miraculous, even as I have. Why not? The difficulty for the scientists, as for each of us, is turning from self to self. The old nature of us has many vested interests and doesn't want to be forsaken. I don't believe my world out there is going to appear concerned about the perfect child within themselves that precedes tangibility in time and space until a common disaster looms for all mankind. Could that be what is turning the distant sky so dark and making all that thunder in the far places? Perhaps. But the disaster doesn't have to happen. What can we do to avert it? We find the child and live the child's equation. The holographic nature of matter. The whole contains the parts, of course, but it isn't so well known that the whole, Godhead, is greater than the sum of its parts. Nor has it been known beyond a handful of mystics through history that every part contains information of the whole. That is, we examine a rock, and the rock contains information about the earth. We look at a tree and learn of all life. We get to know a friend and have the knowledge of every man. We perceive every man and know the self. We know the self and have as much knowledge of Godhead as infinite wisdom is capable of perceiving. Is it any wonder so many of the great philosophies have advocated, know thyself? Everything I have learned has come to me in the form of light, one way or another. The flower I enjoy arrives as light. The face I touch arrives as light. For all of us, every sensation has ever been one or another wavelength of light arriving to be examined and understood. In recent years, science has made great strides in understanding the light of the universe. The essence of all matter is light. In an old figure of speech used by the ancients, everything is an image of light. We will do well to understand something of light because light itself is the image of infinite light. For years, I have used what has been known to be called the holographic paradigm as a means of explaining some of the functions of ordinary light. I use the word ordinary to denote what I call limited light, light limited to the speed of 186,300 miles per second, light in motion. Its source, the fountainhead of light, I call by whatever name I would use to refer to as Godhead. I spell that light with a capital. In the mind's eye, I think of it as infinite, therefore at rest. Limited light spirals within motionless light. Light, with a capital L, and light are one light. Light in motion is the movement of the measure of infinite light. To put it another way, it is light's self-measuring. But notice, the awareness that reads these words can take the measure of limited light. Awareness perceives limited light within itself, yet awareness can in no wise take a full measure of illimitable light. Awareness, life, and limited light are apparently wed to one another. Another, two that are one. But note again, these two that are one are within infinite light. Three that are one. A trinity with the very life I am smack dab in the middle. This is only a hint of the beginning. To make sense of a deific solipsism with words has taken me half a century, but there is a deific solipsism present as this universe within awareness, within the ineffable. The door to it all is the very light of light that reads these words, hears these words, and the light that illuminates them. To understand the wonders of limited light is to marvel at the wonder of illimitable light, Godhead, Father of lights. Consider the light bouncing into your eyes from this sheet of paper is not only bringing images of the printed words, but images of the entire room, whether you are noticing them or not. And not just images within your line of sight, but of virtually everything in the room, behind the furniture, under the tables, on the hidden shelves. If the light that illumines the page comes from the window, there is information pouring through your eyes containing an image of every mountain, every tree, every blade of grass as far as the eye can see. Farther, because the eye can't see what is hidden behind that building. But the light bouncing from these words does. If this seems difficult to believe, let me make it more so. The light, which is the apparent substance of this bit of paper, contains all the knowledge of the entire Earth, solar system, galaxy, universe. This may seem a bit mind-bending at first, but once the principle of holography is understood, one perceives a most marvelous secret, which the ancients were aware of. The part contains knowledge of the whole. Every part of the whole contains knowledge of the whole of the whole. Let me give an illustration of this wonder of wonders. It will be particularly meaningful now that the leading edge of science has concluded that all matter, be it particle or galaxy, is holographic imagery, arrested or slowed light. Do you remember the old square brownie box camera of yore? The first ones didn't even have a lens, just an opening that would open and close at about 1/25th of a second and take a dandy picture. Pretend just such a brownie snapshot was made of you and your Uncle George way back on your 5th birthday. Uncle George had come to visit, bringing some wonderful gift with him. Someone took a picture which you have cherished and kept for 50 long years, because that day and that uncle were very special. There you stand, stiff and straight in your party clothes, the gift in its box tucked under your right arm. Uncle George is standing on your left, a big smile on his face, his arm holding you close. In the background, someone with a big fanny is bent over, but her head was hidden behind Uncle George when the picture was snapped, and you have long forgotten who it was. In the left front is an image of a foot. To whom it belonged, you never did know. In fact, you have long forgotten what the gift was, but you remember it was very special. Uncle George always brought special gifts. Well, now, it is 50 years later, and we are still pretending. The old snapshot has taken a battering over the years. Way back when, you took the scissors and cut the extraneous foot away, since it had no business in the picture. Years later, when you were away at school, the suitcase was accidentally closed on it, tearing away the entire bottom half. Finally, since only the top of your head remained along with Uncle George, you trimmed away everything except his head and shoulders. Everything. That is all that remains now. Half of Uncle George smiling. The beautiful scene on the park is gone, and the gift tucked under your arm is gone. The foot and the frilly fanny have long been forgotten, except for a small fragment of the original picture. All else is memory of a distant childhood, and much of that has faded. Now, let us stop pretending, except for the fragment of the picture. Let us discuss a relatively simple physical fact. Can you guess what will happen if we shine a certain type of split beam laser light on our fragment? Voila! Between the projecting laser and the fragment comes a holographic image of Uncle George hovering in the air like a ghost. The laser light strikes the fragment, bounces away, and reproduces an image of light. But lo, something new has been added. Uncle George is in 3 dimensions, not just 2, as he appeared in the original snapshot. There he stands in depth, as well as in length and height. Pudgy cheeks and smile, all in 3 dimensions. Look again. There's more. All of Uncle George is there, not just the head, the shoulders, or the fragment, but the bottom half that was lost in the suitcase caper back in 1940. Can the top half of an image reproduce the bottom half that isn't there? Clearly, there it is. But as the lady who inspects Hanes' underwear in the TV commercial says, that's just the beginning, kid. Look at the holographic image again. There you are, too, tall and straight, with the box tucked under your arm, and all in 3 dimensions. And there are the park, the trees, the flowers, the big behiny with the frilly dress, a bird, a butterfly you'd never seen before, and all in 3 dimensions. How in the world can such a small fragment contain so much information? But wait, there is still much more. The little brownie camera saw one point of view as the picture was taken years ago. Now, 50 years later, our fragment still has etched on its surface 100,000 points of view, nearly to infinity, almost as if the camera were all places simultaneously when the picture was snapped. Well, the camera wasn't, but the light was, and that's why we're getting 3 dimensions. Let me try to explain while you look at the holographic images again. As you look full on, facing the images hovering magically in the air, you will notice they are placed like figures on the stage, so to speak. the distant trees behind you and your uncle, the frilly behind, between you and the trees, and so on. As you move on to the left and the right of the images, you begin to notice things that were never in the original picture at all. For instance, you lean to the left and see the head of someone attached to the frilly dress. Your mother! You never realized she was in the picture. You walk to the right side of your own image and see what is written on the box. Lincoln Logs. Now you remember that long forgotten gift. Here you are looking at information that was never apparent on the original picture at all, much less on the small scrap remaining. The fragment somehow contains knowledge of the whole and much more than was seen by the eye 50 years ago when the picture was made. Oh, yes, the foot that was mysteriously in the original picture is there too, with a faint body attached. Your father! He was running to get in the picture, never realizing he made it. Reader, remember that we are not speaking of high mysticism or metaphysics here. We are only touching down lightly and hopefully dramatically on just one aspect of ordinary light. The very light by means of which you are reading these words. This instant, the awareness of you is being flooded with information quite beyond anything you may ever have dreamed. We are not limited to one point of view as we watch the sunset or the waves breaking along the shore. All points of view are present right here, right now. We are not bound to the physical limits of the eyes and ears. The scene outside the window is a fragment of the earth, isn't it? And isn't the earth a fragment of solar system, galaxy, universe? The part contains information of the whole. But there is more, much more. If these things are true for limited light and motion, and they are, how much more must be true for illimitable, omnipresent light? If limited light brings information of the entire physical, holographic universe, what wonder beyond wonder exists as the source, fountainhead, Godhead, which is being, moving light. Limited light is a portion of infinite light. It contains information of the all as well. The awareness that reads these words is infinite light and limited light. The wisdom it is awesome, awesome. Dear light of life, self of myself, begin your study of light, light. Examine light, look at light, enjoy light. See the light glistening on the water. See the light reflected from the faces of flowers and children. See light twinkling from the stars and from the eyes of love. See light lifting in the morning and lingering in the evening. Examine the light that darkness merely delineates. Sit still and see the wondrous light of life, which is the source of substance of everything. The Galilean mystic, who identified as light itself, these stones shall minister unto thee. Cleave a piece of wood, and I am there. Within a man of light, there is light, and he lights the whole world. We have come from the light. Awareness, life, is the light from which all things come and to which all things return, even as the perfect light of Godhead is the source and substance of awareness. At the speed of light, there is neither space nor time. At light, life is deathless and eternal. There is much power in this message. If you will, you can feel it. How much more is the life of you? The Elijah illustration about the light, time, space, and the real identity. There is a verse in the Gospel according to Thomas. If they say to you, "From where have you originated?" say to them, "We have come from the light, where the light is originated through itself." The genuine identity of us comes from the light. That reality seems buried deep within us, as inaccessible to the intellect as the soul is, the very essence of being. But it is not inaccessible. It is within our reach for the asking. Let me use an analogy that will help us understand. A big brass eagle I call Elijah sits in the middle of my living room coffee table. My son calls it monstrous, but the eagle and I don't mind. Rachel likes it too. Company was here recently, and since the great brass bird on the coffee table can hardly be ignored, it became an illustration about the light, space, and time. There are so many wonders concerning the light. One of them is the mysterious photon itself, the enigmatic bundle of mystery that does so much in the world. Tiny photon, how can you be nearly everywhere in space and time at once? It is that particular quality of the photon which I came to explain via the brass eagle. And this illustration also suggests how the original nature of us is also everywhere in space and time. The photons that illumine this page, or appear entrapped as the very paper itself, are bringing more information to us than could have been dreamed of a few years ago. Essentially, photons are information. Light is information. When viewed subjectively, information is light. There sits Elijah, my big brass eagle, who must weigh 25 pounds, looking for all the world as if he's just come to rest on a brass stump that stands above the water of the glass-top coffee table. Son Bill expects it to go crashing through any day. For the purpose of this illustration, I suggest that Elijah is just leaving his perch, getting ready to fly faster and faster. Well now, how does the brass bird look to us as he goes faster? Smaller, and still smaller, as he gets to the speed of sound, and smaller yet as he flies at half the speed of light. At those speeds, it takes special equipment to see him at all. Then, when he gets to light, which is to say the speed of light, 186,300 miles per second, Elijah becomes a photon to us as we sit in the living room drinking our coffee. Where would Elijah, the photon, be at any given moment in time? From our perspective, virtually everywhere. That's interesting, isn't it? The nature of light is such that our attempts to locate it in time are impossible, because at light it exists beyond time. Experiments suggest that the photon, the eagle at light, is everywhere in the room simultaneously. Though we can't see him with the eye, the fact that he is everywhere as light is the reason we are able to see the things not moving at the speed of light. It is the steady flow of photons that lets us see one another or read these pages in print. Who knows? The photons that brighten this page may be cosmic eagles or angels of light. So far, so good. Don't worry if the illustration isn't precisely accurate scientifically. Now, how does this room look to Elijah as he flies faster and faster? Things seem to be rushing past him more quickly, that's for sure, faster and faster as he passes over our heads. But for the eagle's view, something else is happening which is important to take into our thinking or non-thinking while we make this illustration. The room becomes smaller and smaller to Elijah as he moves faster, not unlike the way the years seem to move more quickly for us as we grow older in time. Not only does the room grow smaller to Elijah, but so does the tangible universe. Smaller, smaller, going, and at the speed of light, gone. To the photon, there is neither time nor space. Or, to put it obversely, the photon is everywhere in tangibility at once. Yet, listen, the photon is ordinary worldly light. It is called limited light by the early Christian Gnostics and me, because it seems to have a strange limit built into itself. The speed of light is calculated by present physics to be the limiting light of the material universe, a primary and absolute end indeed. Einstein proved that light travels at the constant speed no matter what the rest of tangibility does. The speed of sound has the speed of the sound maker added or subtracted from its velocity, but not light. Light travels at the same speed whether the observer is stationary or moving 1,000,000 miles an hour away from it or toward it. So they say. Einstein's equation has been proven essentially correct relative to the photon in our tangible universe. Our worldly experience of matter is somehow pegged to a limited light in motion. So, as Hahn would say, so what? Why the limit? Philosophy and theology, and maybe even metaphysicians here or there, have calculated that infinity is beyond limit. Such thoughts lead to the conclusion that if God exists, God being illimitability, or light spelled with a capital L, then there must be a light beyond the photon light we can measure. Ultimate light must be omnipresent, at rest, light that doesn't move at all. There is something in the Bible about light without shadow, isn't there? Welcome to the club, physicists. The Jews and the Gnostics, the Hindus and the forest wanderers, the Taoists, and many others made that determination thousands of years ago and have gone on to use the greater light to explain things about the lesser, which human sophistication is only now beginning to confirm. If Elijah, traveling at the speed of light, doesn't see this tangible world, what does he see? Another heaven and earth, where light may travel at a higher speed, say the theoretical mathematicians, in strange agreement with various spiritual lights of the world. There is surely insight here. When one leaves the physical body at death, who is to say that the light, the child, the soul of us doesn't return to or become light again, if indeed it has ever stopped being light at all. If tangibility, as we perceive it, doesn't exist at light, does that mean it doesn't exist? If it exists anyway, how many other universes may be perceived under different conditions? At the speed of light, there is no more consciousness of time or space, but a new heaven and earth exist at light, and the old heaven and earth have passed away. Could this have been what the carpenter and the prophets foresaw when they spoke of this world being rolled up like a scroll, and the one above it as well? How is it that the Gnostics rightly referred to the works of this world as an unreal creation by the disposed angel Lucifer, whose name means limited light? Since the material universe does seem to be the creation of photons, from which awareness can't be separated for very long this side of death, what relationship exists between the awareness reading these words and the satanic Lucifer? Could the Zen Buddhist and the absolutist, who decree all relationship between human consciousness and reality, be right after all? Is there justification for the metaphysical insight that says human consciousness is the anti-truth? Wouldn't it be a surprise to the churchman who refuses to examine subjectivism to awaken one day to learn he has been enacting the very Antichrist himself in his refusal to accept God's totality? Or could it be, as it has been shown to me, and as I firmly believe, that there is something beyond all this matter of correct, incorrect, right, left, liberal, conservative, male, female, objective, subjective, and all the other dualisms one can perceive? Yes, there is. And something beyond the concept of single, dual as well, even beyond the concept of beyond. There is a legitimate question as to whether reality will be found by intellectualism at all. But it can be found by the simple and childlike. If I have found a small measure of it, I would think anyone can. This book is an attempt to go beyond science, philosophy, religion, and metaphysics without leaving them. The mysteries of time and space have intrigued mankind from the beginning. In recent years, science has gotten down to real answers in a language most of us can understand. Even more, our technology is putting some of the most esoteric math to the test, and the theories indicated by quantum are working. The atomic bomb, whose enormous energy appears a threat to all living things, is a verification of theory. Another discovery, in many ways more significant, is holography and all the holography suggests. Some of the experimental work of the mathematicians using their principles of quantum allows us to examine the relative nature of time and perceive the ways we may one day soon be unbound from its limitation. The Twin Eagles. More about time, space, and images. The following quotes from the Gospel of Thomas, spoken by Jesus. If they say to you, "From where have you originated?" say to them, "We have come from the light, where the light has originated through itself. It stood and it revealed itself in their image. If they say to you, "Who are you?" say, "We are his sons, and we are the elect of the living Father." If they ask you, "What is the sign of your Father in you?" say to them, "It is a movement and a rest." Whoever knows the all, but fails to know himself, lacks everything. If you bring forth that within yourselves, that which you have will save you. If you do not have that within yourself, that which you do not have within you will kill you. The images are manifest to man, and the light which is within them is hidden in the image of the light of the Father. He will manifest himself, and his image is concealed by his light. When you see your likeness, you rejoice. But when you see your images, which came into existence before you, which neither die nor are manifested, how much will you bear? When you make the two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the outer as the inner, and the above as below, and when you make an image in the place of an image, then shall you enter the kingdom. So now, think with me for a minute here while we build an illustration. Imagine infinite space, eternal time, and infinite life as a dimension that lies just beyond intellectual comprehension. It is beyond intellectual comprehension. This dimension exists in perhaps as ineffable, infinite life and light, which is at rest. It doesn't move as ordinary light moves. Imagine that this boundless life and light could squeeze a quantum of itself, a portion of itself, of its light, life, and energy, through an aperture or hole within itself, where that portion emerged into a void, and in so doing represents this universe where we presently sit making an illustration. Inasmuch as the quantum of ineffable substance, life, light, energy, squeezed through the hole is not all of the greater dimension, and since it emerges into an eternal vacuum, perhaps many vacuums, like bubbles, it begins an enormous replicative expansion into time at the instant it pours through this aperture, rushing to fill the void contained subjectively within the greater dimension. That replication or limited duplication is holographic, an image of the image, not dissimilar to the generation of a child within the womb. The quantum of light, life, and energy begins an immediate, enormous expansion of duplicating ejecta to fill the void, and expands at the speed determined presumably by the quantity of moving light, 186,300 miles per second. At the point of emission, the original five-dimensional quantum is reduced to 3 dimensions of interrelated space plus a dimension of ongoing time moving in one direction away from the place of explosion, from out of ineffable whatever. Thus far, our illustration represents the expanding universe we are living in. and suggests that science's ongoing search in the examination of matter and energy is tracing a movement backward in time and direction from material things to the time and place of emission creation. In this movement backward, science will soon reach the alpha beginning, the moment of the Big Bang on one end, and omega, orifice, place, black hole on the other. The time and place of the birth of tangible universe within the void. Just recently, as a matter of fact, the orbiting Challenger put a 1-ton camera into space above the atmosphere. The camera spent 2 days looking for evidences of the black hole center of this galaxy. Last year, the largest accelerator ever was used to examine the microcosm. Recently, the Fermi accelerator yielded 1.6 trillion electron volts, taking particles back to a billionth of a second before the Big Bang. The intent of the orbiting camera is to observe evidence of the black hole from which, or back into which, this galaxy appears to be moving. Emergence happened, as time goes, 15 billion linear years ago, as measured by the speed of limited light. But there is non-moving light beyond limited light, for which moving light is an image. Science's investigations have an inexplicable intellectual limitation in front of them. At the point of the explosion, where the mass of this galaxy began and or is returning, the forces of the black hole become so enormous that moving light cannot escape its gravitational field. There, time stops and or moves in the opposite direction, or, if we think of it dimensionally, is transcended. Mass becomes massless, or is transcended. Gravity moves to infinity, or is transcended. Alpha and omega become one, and or are transcended. What lies beyond the black hole becomes unimaginable, totally beyond comprehension, transcendent, even as the heart of us here now transcends the limits of the intellect. Hold everything right there a minute. Let me approach the black hole from another direction. We bring the Elijah illustration, earlier paper, into play, where the holographic material, brass eagle's mass, becomes greater as the eagle moves faster, until the eagle theoretically becomes a massless photon moving at the speed of light. Perhaps matter, already holographic, can't quite do that, but it can get nearly to the speed of light. The identity of us, the child or soul of us, is the light that is beyond this light already. Notice how the photon of ordinary light is linked with the 4 dimensions of time and space, virtually everywhere in linear space simultaneously, even while being connected with the objects of time and space moving at slower speeds, illumining them all the way down to you and me as we sit here as a physical hulk, also theoretical, and think about all this. That is, when the eagle reaches the speed of light, there seems to be 2 eagles. One, the physical and holographic, as all matter is, the other, a photon. They are twins, of one another, one moving at light, the other virtually at rest in time and space, and lesser in dimension, greater in mass than the photon image of itself. One within the other, one objective, the other subjectively within the other. Not unlike the first illustration of the expansion in the womb, holographic tangibility coming out of ineffability. These two eagles are actually one, but they seem to be two. The photon eagle is the imaged twin of the non-moving eagle here on Earth. The photon eagle is prior to the brass eagle, even though it seems the other way around. It might be said that the photon eagle is the soul of the identity of the other. The heavy, lumbered Elijah exists a fraction of a second behind photon eagle. Notice that there is no condition in which the lumbering, solid eagle finds himself that the photon eagle cannot free himself from. By being on both sides of the problem simultaneously in time. The photons that illuminate this page are on both sides of time and have been capable of moving around the earth many times since we started reading this paragraph. But remember, when we began with the first part of this illustration, we saw that all tangibility, like the photon eagle, has its basis on the other side of the black hole, existing before the expansory explosion into time and space. In other words, the photon eagle, represented as this universe here and now, which includes this present awareness, reading these words, is the image of the soul of a third, prior, super-eagle on the other side of the impenetrable black hole. Perhaps science's intuiting and confirming antimatter is tantamount to that third eagle. Certainly, it is tantamount to Godhead, for whom the image and the image of image exists. Now hear this illustration in abeyance for a moment while I make a statement of personal fact for me. I have found that I have a twin of my own. I call that one the original child of myself. I know the twin of me seems to permeate all time and space in this tangible universe, and it brings me whatever information is necessary right here as I, first, labor like the brass eagle, struggling alone at my typewriter to explain the light I have been shown and have consequently proven and lived for myself, and secondly, as I labor, then to announce the light I have discovered or that has been shown to me, which I have proven in my worldly affairs. I know that the child of me, like the photon, is ahead of physical me and behind physical me in time and space, enwrapping me and mine. I know that this twin image of myself is much more nearly the real of me than this physical image that labors with these words. But the physical image of each of us has its purpose and its destiny in time and space, infinitely beyond anything history or human observation can imagine. I know that I have become more and more the child of illimitable light as I have followed it to bring information to the human sense of myself. Those precious glimpses and glimmers I have been writing about even as this is also a glimpse being written here and now. Somewhere along the line of time and space, we begin to intuit this child within and without, even as the prophets and the avatars of the tangible world of history have done. Somewhere we begin to affirm the inner child's reality as opposed to this chunk of clay, delayed in time, that comes forth and perishes in time and space. This physical body merely a recognized or unrecognized confirmation of the preceding real, following in time a millionth of a billionth of a second. Somewhere we begin to feel the child and to affirm its living existence. Somewhere we begin to be enlivened by it and receive conscious instruction from it, which becomes directly applicable to the quantum images of that child, appearing as this body and all bodies in this tangible universe. And then, somewhere, for some of us, we run as the child, doing for our subjective world whatever seems necessary to lift it up, bind its wounds, and heal the heavy hearts, and bring it to sing the same song of the morning star. Then, when one is ready, as when a seed is ready, there is an experience of enormous human proportion where the child of light I am is brought very close to the apprehension of the non-moving light of life, the original image, overdwelling all, the original one on the other side of the veil, the portal through which this tangible experience springs. Just as I call on the child of me to lead the way in the world of time and space, which is only imagery, so the child I am calls on the ineffable one beyond, Godhead, to guide it. In the very simplest words I can find, it is as if the real of me is holding God's hand, and the other hand of me is reaching out with these glimpses and glimmers of the real to lift myself bodily in actual confirmation to the comprehension of the beginning of things, which is also the end of things. It is as if I recognize me to be the seed of God, and as I do, that seed passes through me into the world. The glimpses are the divine seed exploding in. My fingers have flown over the keys here. I was instructed in an instant, came here to write these words with the accompanying illustrations, and presently have no idea if the glimpse has been conveyed at all. There is an astounding and marvelous link written here, more expansive than any I have used heretofore. It allows me to explain in ordinary terms how it is that I am constantly instructed, and how I draw ever closer in time and space to the one who exists beyond the limited dimension of time and space, even as it exists as the basis for matter's apparent existence, and is present where the tangible world is. I am certain there are others within myself subjectively seeing exactly what I am seeing. We are the same one.